Hello and welcome to Ignite with Mwangala. With me, Mwangala Chakalashi Santos. Now, today's show is special in the sense that our guest is no ordinary citizen of Zambia. Now, let's check him out. He was born on the 25th of June, 1944, in Choma district of Zambia. He became District High Commissioner of Zambia to the United Kingdom on October 26, 1964, at the age of 20 years and 4 months. He became ambassador to the Soviet Union in August 1965, aged 21 years and 2 months. Became permanent secretary in the office of the president in September 1966, aged 22 years and 3 months. Became ambassador of Zambia to the United Nations in New York in March in 1968, aged 23 years old and 9 months. Was elected to represent Zambia on the UN Security Council for 2 years, from 1st January 1969 to 31st December 1970. Became editor-in-chief of the Times of Zambia and the Sunday Times of Zambia in January 1972, aged 27 years and 7 months. Became Minister of Foreign Affairs in December 1973, aged 28 years and 6 months. Became a member of the Central Committee of the then ruling party, UNIP, in June 1975 at 31 years old. This just to mention a few. He is no other than Vernon Johnson Mwaanga, fondly known as Vijay. Welcome to Ignite.
Thank you very much, Mwanga, for having me on your program. I'm happy to welcome you to my home.
I'm super excited to be chatting with you, particularly on Ignite.
That's I'm happy to have you and to share some information with you.
Now, I know you've lived an extraordinary life. I mean, just looking at this, I couldn't go on. And I'm thinking, what an extraordinary life that you have lived. If you were to describe yourself in one word, what would that be?
I would say I'm passionate about service. Throughout my life, I've been passionate about service. My involvement in politics and diplomacy, among others, has been driven by passion. So my passion is for service to my country and service to the people of Africa and the world.
So when you say passion, what exactly do you mean?
Commitment.
Yeah.
I mean a sense of commitment to serve and make this world a better place, not just for a few, but for all.
Do you think you have achieved that goal, looking at what you've written in your book?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've achieved what I set out to do, but I've achieved part of what I set out to do, because there has to be an evolution, and because of the generational change which is bound to take place and which has already taken place, I leave this to future generations to take these ideas to the next level so that we can make Zambia, we can make Africa and the world a better place for all.
So if I may ask, who is Vijay? And where did the name, by the way, Vijay came from? I remember growing up, I knew you as Vijay. I literally had to find out what your full names were. Who is Vijay?
Well, the name Vernon was given to me by a missionary who delivered me at Macha Mission Hospital. And the second name was also given to me as Johnson. And that's how then the media, the Times of Zambia and the then Zambia Daily Mail, they started abbreviating my name to Vijay, and Vijay became the norm. So everywhere I go now, everyone calls me Vijay, which is good enough for me.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned from your, I would call it a fully lived life?
Well, the lessons I think that I've learned in life is, among them, are that humility, it's very important in public service, and that to serve members of the public, you have to know what they want and you have to listen to them. So that when you speak on their behalf, you represent their views, not your own views. And I've also learned that leadership is a very important thing, and that when you're in leadership, don't look down upon anybody. If you take my example, for example, I was Rupiah Banda's foreign minister. I was his boss. Later on, he became my president. I was, Amusa Mwanamwamba was ambassador at the United Nations when he was my press secretary. Later on, he became Speaker of the National Assembly, and he became my boss. So there is an evolution in life, and life changes. How you treat people today will be reflected in your future relationship with them, because I remember in particular with Mr. Mwanamwamba, whom I hold in very high esteem, he always told his staff at Parliament that when this man was my ambassador and I was his press secretary, he treated me well. Now that I'm here at Parliament as Speaker, I want all of you to treat him well, because he treated all of us well. So that has been part of my legacy. Respect for people and not looking down upon anybody. Everyone is important in their own right. And you never know what tomorrow brings. You never know what tomorrow is going to look like. So it's always important, as my mother used to say, be respectful of everyone and do the right thing. When you do the right thing, you cannot be criticized for doing the right thing.
Exactly. Now, you are what I would call Zambia's most experienced politician. What are some of the milestones that you achieved during your political career? Would you like to share?
Well, I'm happy that my peers, namely people like KK, Dr. Kaunda, and in the region, people like Maremu Julius Nyerere, the late Kwame Nkrumah, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, who was Prime Minister of India, the first Prime Minister of China by the name of Zhou Enlai. And now they call him Zhou Enlai because they've indigenized these names in China. They gave me inspiration. They inspired me to be passionate, to continue to be passionate about service, and also to understand the issues that I'm dealing with. Normally, I used to get very irritable or irritated if I didn't quite understand what I was dealing with. Even when I was involved in mediation in a number of countries, I spent a lot of time at the beginning trying to understand what the issues were, why there is disagreement, and how possible it would be to at least start narrowing these differences and this gap. So I also learned in politics that it was important for me to give younger people an opportunity to work with me so that they can carry on this torch to the next level. So when I was minister, for example, I used to have personal assistants, 2 personal assistants in my office who were there for maybe 6 months. After 6 months, a new team came. I traveled with them around the world. I've been to 146 countries. I traveled with them around the world. They took notes. They attended all my meetings together with the other officials from the foreign ministry. And after every meeting, I would sit down with them to find out what they had picked up as important. And we discussed and debated these issues and came to some kind of agreement. So I've always been passionate about mentoring young people and young men and women to try and help them face the future, because I was always mindful that our time would come and go, but they had a lot more time to continue making contributions to Zambia's well-being, and that they should learn from the experiences which I had gained.
Have you lived a life of purpose? Would you
A
say?
purposeful life? Yeah, I think I've lived a purposeful life. My purpose in life was to serve the people, and I served the people with satisfaction because that is what I had always wanted to do. Service to the people. Even from the time as a young youth leader in UNIP, or later on when I was appointed regional secretary in the main party in charge of Choma and Mwangala districts, I always had people around me and always talking to people, understanding what their concerns were and what they wanted us to do. I was very inclusive and very consultative because you don't lose anything by consulting other people. Learning is a continuous process. It never ends. It merely begins.
Okay. Now, who would you say has been your mentor, or who inspired you to become what you are today?
I think Dr. Kenneth Kaunda certainly is number one, because he recognized me as a young man who had ability to contribute something, not just to the struggle, but to Zambia's development as well. And that's why he appointed me as Deputy High Commissioner to London at the age of 20, then to the Soviet Union, now called Russia, at the age of 21, and I was Director General of the National Intelligence Service. It appears in my book as Permanent Secretary in the Office of the President. It was a cover for being DG. I was the first Director General of the National Intelligence Service. And thereafter, I went to the United Nations as ambassador. I served because Dr. Kaunda felt that I had a contribution to make, and I'm happy that I didn't let him down. He always made reference to me. So you should be like this young man, who is passionate and who is thorough in his work. When you give him something, he's extremely thorough in doing his work. And for me, that was always an inspiration. And I used to say to Dr. Kaunda, if you see me doing something wrong, please correct me. Tell me that I'm doing something wrong, because I always want to better my performance. It's the only way that I can succeed in life.
Now, looking at where you started off as a leader, I'm looking at a 21-year-old boy, I would call it.
That's right.
How were you able to strike a balance between being a leader, and that comes with responsibilities, and being a youth?
Well, first of all, I had to accept that this transition from being a young person into leadership, being catapulted into leadership, would mean that I would have to surrender my youth, part of my youth, to leadership, which is essentially what I did. Because I realized that as a leader, as Deputy High Commissioner or as ambassador, I couldn't do things that 21-year-olds or 20-year-olds could do. It would attract far too much attention.
Exactly.
So I surrendered part of my youth to leadership. I don't regret it, because I made very good use of it. I was also very conscious of the fact that after me, there will be other younger people who would come. And that if I mess up the appointments I had been given and the responsibilities that I had been given, I would destroy the chances for the younger people who came after me. And because I didn't spoil it, the younger people who came after me, even let's say when I was in cabinet, proposals for appointments would come. I remember in one particular instance, there was a proposal to appoint a young Attorney General to become Attorney General. A young man is an Attorney General. It was George Chilupe at the time. And people said, but he's too young. In cabinet, they were saying, he's too young to be appointed Attorney General. So I heard the arguments, and towards the end I put up my hand, and I was recognized, and I said, how old was I when I was appointed ambassador? And how old was I when I was appointed foreign minister the first time round, since I served as foreign minister twice? are you looking at age or are you looking at ability?
Exactly.
You are failing to draw a distinction between age and between ability.
Exactly.
If you are saying that this person doesn't have the ability to become Attorney General, then I will understand. But if you are opposing it only on grounds of age, then, Mr. President, I suggest that we approve this nomination because this person is eminently qualified to do the job.
Wow. Now, I'm looking at a young man, 21 years of age. He's got the looks, he's got the money. What happened to the girls? I mean, were you not
Well,
one that was followed?
as you probably you'll be able to read in my book or read already. When I was ambassador, for example, at the United Nations, they've got a magazine for women, UN Women's Magazine. It used to exist at that time. And every month they published the 10 best dressed men, 10 best dressed ambassadors, and 10 worst dressed ambassadors. From the time I went to the UN, I was always in the first 10. And of course, this attracted a lot of attention from the young ladies. And at one time, I earned myself the unwholesome title of being a ladies' man. But the ladies had difficulties keeping away from
True.
me, or the other way around, whichever was applicable. So that has been part of my life, and I've readily admitted it in my book because I wanted to be honest with myself and to get the truth out to the public so that they don't say, how come you didn't write about this?
Exactly.
And I have written about it, so the record is there for everyone to see.
Now, I read your book, like I told you, I couldn't put it down, particularly on the chapter on your marriage. Can we talk about that a little bit? I know you started off with Viola, who happens to be your auntie.
Yes.
And then you went on to Lillian, you went on to Frida, to Jesper. Would you like to talk about your
Well,
marriage
I didn't
life?
know about Viola being my at the time.
Yeah.
But we later on we discovered that actually she was an auntie of mine. So that ended there, and then the others who came as friends, and later on, of course, I got married to my first wife, Jesper Mporokoso. She was from the Bemba Royal Establishment in Northern Province, and then later on I got married to Margaret Schultz, and then to Frida Matutu, and then later on to Steiner Mwaanga, and later on to Beatrice Hajra, and now I'm on my 6th marriage, and I've been married now for 20 years, so
Wow.
I suppose that closed that unhappy chapter. Do I regret the fact that I married so many times? Yes, I do. I wish that I hadn't, but there were circumstances which I clearly explained in the book, which led me to keep getting married, because my belief at the time was that if I'm unhappy in a marriage, I have no reason to want to stay in it. I don't get married to, I'm not married to public opinion. It is my happiness which was at stake, and it is my happiness which I had to satisfy. But I also had to take into account the interests of the other party. Am I being a good husband? Am I doing the needful to keep my marriage? Among many other things. And my sisters used to blame me. They say, you spoil the women too much. That's why you're having all these problems with your wives now. But that's okay, and that phase has come and gone.
Yeah.
And now I'm married to Edna Banda, who is from Pezeni's kingdom, and we have been happily married for 20 years.
Fantastic. You've said something that is very profound. You've talked of happiness, that, you know, what mattered the most for you in marriages was your happiness.
Yes.
What is your definition of happiness?
Happiness, conflict-free, freedom, confidence in your partner, being able to share problems, discuss possible solutions. We had children, growing up and bringing up children. Most of my children were brought up by me as a single parent during the time when I was not married. But it was a good experience for me because I managed to bring them into one house, and they all grew up together as one. A lot of people didn't even know that they were from different mothers.
I know a young man will be watching and will be thinking, Vijay, 6 wives, and you know, what is it that you look for in women?
Well,
now we are teaching. Now,
I can relate to someone who has got feelings for me and someone I can have feelings for.
Okay, that's important. Yeah?
And that is very important. Someone you can confide in, someone you can trust as a partner, as a life partner. Trust is involved, love is involved, and someone that you can communicate with on a very regular basis. And that is important in itself.
Now, I know that you did very well, either as a father, as a husband, which we don't see much of that happening with the young men out there. I think the tables have turned. Women are now suddenly become the head of the house, and the men have taken a back step. Why do you think that is happening? I want you to talk as a Bashukombe here now, to the young men. yeah.
Well, I think that the dynamics of marriage have changed. Because now you have a situation where the young people who get married, you probably find that they're both professionals.
Yeah.
They've got careers to look after. This one is going to work in one direction, the other one is going in the other direction. You find that the women have become a lot more assertive in marriage, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but provided they recognize that the head of the house is the Igwe.
I like that.
But there's nothing wrong in being assertive.
Yeah.
And when you have two professionals living together, trying to build separate careers, that's not so easy. And but it doesn't really happen in every marriage. It does not happen in every marriage. You find that in most marriages, men are still men in charge. But in a number of other marriages, pardon the expression, you find that there is what they call petticoat imperialism, where the lady of the house, especially
in charge,
in homes where husbands don't really have much to do and they're dependent on wives, the wives dictate what needs to be done.
Exactly.
It's only natural that happens, but it doesn't happen in too many homes anywhere.
If you had to come back in this lifetime, would you still want to come back as Vijay?
Yes, I would very much want to come back as Vijay, and I would not want to change anything, any of the values that I stood for. I'm a very determined person in terms of wanting achievements, to achieve something in life. And this is something that I've always said to my children as they were growing up. In our house, we had every Friday evening after supper, we all sat around the dinner table, the children, to find out if they had any problems they wanted us as a family, all of us, to know, and to give them advice in terms of, you should have ambitions. You should work towards these ambitions. You don't just expect things to be given to you on a silver platter. People work for them. So you have to work for them and get a good education and work for them, because if you don't work for them, you get nowhere in life. So really, if I were to come back in my second life, I would want to come back as Vijay and to do all the things that I have done in the past. Would I change some of the things? The answer is yes. I would make an endeavor to do some of the things a little better than I did.
Okay. You've talked of values. You've talked of some of the values that you stand for. Would you like to share a few?
Yes, the values, integrity is one of them. And integrity in life, for me, it is so important. And truthfulness, it's so important. I was brought up in a home where the truth would always set you free. And both my mother and father, who were both teachers, as you probably know by now, they always said to us, don't lie. You should always speak the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Wow.
So we learned at an early age, to say the truth, even if the truth hurts. It is better to say the truth and ask for forgiveness, or people to tell you the truth and they ask for forgiveness. And these are some of the things that I've always valued in life. And I've also valued hard work. It's important in life to work hard. If you don't work hard, don't just expect things to fall like manna from heaven. You have to work for them. And that money is not everything.
Yeah.
Human values are even more important than money. And that it is better to leave public office with integrity than to leave public office in a dented manner where you'll be associated with not having retired, impressed, owing government so much money, having misused so much money, or you acquired wealth through dubious means and using your position in government. So it's though all those are the values which for me have been very important in my life.
What kept you going? I mean, for you to have attained what you have attained now, for you to have gotten where you've gotten now, obviously you had to have mental strength, emotional strength, spiritual strength. What is a typical day like for Vijay?
Well, a typical day would be like you have people from your constituency, they come with their wives or children, and they come and tell you that we were at a bus stop and our money was stolen, so we didn't know how to travel back to Ron. So we thought of an idea that we should see our MP to help us. And you, of course, give them transport money to go back. Some would come and say, I don't have money to pay my school fees, so I thought maybe I could get help from my MP. And there are people who also thought that being a minister in the government meant that you had a lot of money.
Exactly.
In fact, I remember a very interesting story which I must tell you. When I was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs, the first time in 1973, December, Alex Chikwanda, my friend, my boyhood friend Alex Chikwanda, was also appointed Finance Minister on that day. But he had been in cabinet before I was in cabinet. He served as Minister of Health and Agriculture before he became Finance Minister. So when he came to congratulate me at my house, because I was appointed Foreign Minister like today, the following day I went on my first mission to Kenya to attend Kenya's 10th anniversary of independence. And I said to him, well, I'd gotten my letter of appointment with my conditions of service. So I said, Brother ABC, don't tell me that this is all ministers' end. So he looked at my letter of appointment. He said, yes, that's what we end. I said, oh my God. I had come from being editor-in-chief of a newspaper where I was earning 3 times more money than what the ministers were earning. So by accepting to be a minister, I had to take a salary cut.
Wow.
And I took a salary cut. So you can imagine.
Can imagine. Can only imagine.
And people, just think that, the minister will solve, my MP will solve everything.
Yeah.
People have a different conception of what MPs are supposed to do. They think that, you also run this benevolent fund, where you can draw
Just
money
pull
to
out
pay for
and
their
yeah.
school fees and their bus fares, to enable them to go back to the constituents, among other things. But that's really not the true work of the MP. You do it out of a human feeling, but not out of a sense of duty, because that's not part of the duties of an MP.
Exactly. Now, you worked with 4 different presidents, if I'm not mistaken.
That is true.
Who would you say was your best president?
Well, I think
without hating any one of them.
Kenneth Kaunda was my first president, and under him, cabinet was better organized in terms of our work. He was very strict with time, and I have always been very time conscious. And we got to a point where he would say, okay, we are adjourning the meeting to 17 hours. Please be on time. I know who will be on time. Vijay will be on time. And for sure, when there was a cabinet meeting called for 9, by 8:45, I had already arrived. I always arrived 10 to 15 minutes early. But there were perpetual latecomers. People who were allergic to timekeeping and who always came late. And Dr. Kaunda got to a point where he started turning them away. When they came late for cabinet meeting, he told them, you go, you'll attend the next meeting. And then people took time a lot more seriously.
Yeah.
So I think that working with Dr. Kaunda and watching integrity, issues concerning him, and the fact that he led a very simple life. Even State House was very modestly furnished. He dressed very modestly. He ate very modestly. When you went to eat at State House, you ate in Shima and Katapa and
he was not extravagant.
He was not extravagant. But he was a leader, a true leader. He provided leadership in terms of crisis. And here we had difficult times in this country. The liberation struggle was upon us. We opened an office, a sub-regional office of the Liberation Committee, because the main office was in Dar es Salaam. The sub-regional office was here in Lusaka on Chirumburu Road, which is now a staff college for the Ministry of Defense. All the freedom fighters were based here. We faced a lot of challenges with people coming from neighboring countries, the colonialists from Mozambique, the Portuguese, Angola, the Portuguese, the Rhodesians, the apartheid South Africans, coming to attack camps, villages. A lot of innocent people died because of what they did, and they were punishing us, according to them, because of our support for the freedom struggle. But we had made a commitment to the OAU and to ourselves that for as long as any inch of Africa was not free, we would not feel free to walk the streets of Zambia. We wanted every inch of Africa to be free. We were assisted by other independent countries to become free. So it was our duty to assist those who were not yet independent to be free.
Fantastic.
So it was a very challenging time, but he provided leadership, and I watched him very carefully at meetings with other heads of state. But there are also the funny side of things. For example, when I was foreign minister, I would go and meet different presidents in the countries where I visited. And sometimes the president would say, oh, before we meet with the other ministers, I want to meet the foreign minister alone. So you go in and you sit like the president would sit like where you are, and me here. Oh, minister, what would you like to drink? You order a drink. The drink comes. By the time the drink comes, the president falls asleep. Fast asleep, and he starts snoring. So you begin saying to yourself, what does a good diplomat do in this situation? Do you wake up the president?
Exactly.
Or you just have your drink
and leave?
And after a reasonable time, decide to leave. He would work up to turn the other side, and you put the magazine down, if you're reading a magazine, And he turns from the left or from the right to the left, and vice versa. And after that, 1 hour and 30 minutes, he said, well, I think now it's time to leave. So you quietly leave. You find the media outside waiting for you. How was your meeting with the president and minister? And you say, oh, we had a wonderful meeting. You couldn't say that we didn't have a meeting, because that would be the end of his career.
Oh, yeah.
The president or prime minister's career. So you had to deal with subjects which were considered honest. Like, we discussed bilateral relations, how to strengthen them, and that we will consult on this and that issues which fall within the ambit of the African Union. Just make a brief, innocent speech and go.
Wow.
And the minister accompanying you now in the car said, oh, I'm glad we had a good meeting with my president. And you whisper to him and say, we didn't have a meeting.
He was sleeping.
But there were so many other episodes. You know? For example, at one time I was asked to go to Ivory Coast, because we used to have an embassy there. And President Kaunda asked me to go and inform President Houphouët-Boigny then that we were closing the embassy for financial reasons, for economic reasons. So I went and I took a letter. I handed over the letter to the president, and our ambassador then was the late Steke Mwale, and I had 3 other officials with me. So I informed President Houphouët-Boigny, and totally unexpectedly, he turned around to me and said, Minister, how much does it cost you to keep your embassy here? And I had the figures, so I told him. I said, it costs us so much, and the ambassador is here. I said, you confirm these figures? So he kept quiet for a while, and then he said to me, I value Zambia's presence in Abidjan, in Ivory Coast. I am prepared to pay for the embassy for the next 5 years.
Oh, wow. And you didn't see that coming? I
did not see that coming. None of us saw that coming. I looked at my officials who were accompanying me to see if anyone would slip a piece of paper to tell me how to deal with this. No one did. I looked at the ambassador, they were all looking down me. I was left alone to find a solution. And so in the end, I said to Mr. President, I very much appreciate the offer you made. All I can say is that our foreign policy is controlled by Parliament. If Parliament ever heard that you are financing our embassy, our government is going to fall. And I'm sure you don't want that to happen. So in as much as I thank you for the offer you have made, regrettably, we cannot accept it for the reasons that I've given you.
Wow. Now
so,
you had to make a quick decision there.
Very quick, come up with a quick reason.
So
after the interview, I said to the ambassador and to my officials, you guys, we pay you to advise the minister.
Exactly.
You were all looking down. And they said, well, Minister, we knew that you were a consummate professional. You would come up with something better than anything. You have been in the diplomatic service, you are well trained. You went through the British Foreign Service. We knew you'd come up with something.
Fantastic.
So it's those are some of the experiences you have when you travel to different countries.
Wow. If you're joining us now, I am talking to Vernon Johnson Mwaanga, popularly or fondly known as Vijay. Now, you talked about working with Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Talk about the other 3 that you worked for.
Yes. I worked with President Kenneth David Kaunda, our first president. We started working together during the struggle for independence. And then after the change of government, because I then left UNIP in 1990, and we formed, I'm one of the founder members of the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD. We had our first chairman, our first national chairman, was a man whom I'm sure you probably know, Arthur Winner. And he had 2 national vice chairmen, Frederick Chiluba and myself. And so we then formed the party and then selected candidates for parliament, and we selected Chiroba as our presidential candidate. And I worked under President Chiroba for 10 years in government. After that, after the abortive attempt by him to go for a third term, which was resisted stoutly by me and many others, we then chose Levi Mwanawasa to become a president of Zambia. And I worked with Levi Mwanawasa from 2001 up to 2008. And unfortunately, he died while in office. And then we had to choose another candidate, namely my dear friend, Rupia Bwezanibanda, to become our presidential candidate, and won the election, and he served from 2008 to 2011. So that gives you the 4 presidents that I worked under.
Fantastic. Now, I know you've said a lot. I wish I could stay here forever because I'm really enjoying this. Where do you draw your strength from?
Well, I draw my strength from my belief, that even now, for example, in retirement, I see a lot of academicians, I see a lot of students who are doing research fellows from various universities in Zambia and in the region, Zimbabwe, South Africa. I also see academicians from Europe, Oxford University, Cambridge, and other universities from Sweden, from the US. I realized that, obviously my experience has been a very unique one, and that it's important for me to share my story with others so that younger people can also get inspired that they too can do it.
Exactly.
I've always resisted the saying by my generation, telling young people that you are the future leaders, but they don't give them a future. At least I demonstrated that in support of young people being future leaders. I mentored a number of them. I was able to coach a number of them, and they became very important leaders in government and in the private sector and in UN institutions, etc., etc. So that really, for me, it's important that my story be told, that it is my hope that it to inspire young people to aspire to higher heights in life and never to give up on their ambitions to achieve higher heights. I've been very passionate, for example, about education. And you'll be interested to know that we started Leopards Hill Secondary School, 1976, using own resources, and I was chairman of the board of trustees until a few years ago, for 40 years, until a few years ago when I handed over the school to the Catholic Church. And so I've been very passionate about what I'm doing and building a school just for the community as part of my legacy. And I started the Diplomatic Institute, for example, ZIDIS, Zambia Institute for Diplomatic Studies. And I got the United Nations to part fund it. The government of Ireland also was part funding it. The East African community, East African ECA, the Economic Community for Africa, the UN, they were part of it. They used to provide lecturers as well. And the only condition they gave me was that out of a class of 25, at least 12 should be from neighboring countries. And I said I had no problem. When I was training as a diplomat at Oxford University, that was the composition. People came from different parts of the world, and we were all in the same class doing a diploma course in international relations and in diplomacy. So really, for me, service has been a passion, and I really encourage young people to be serious in what they're doing, and to strive to improve on their performances all the time, and to learn new things all the time, because learning is a continuous process. It never ends. It merely stops. It merely begins. It never ends. It merely begins.
Out of the many books that you have read, what is that one book that has changed you?
Well, I'm not sure that it has changed me, but I've been influenced by a number of books. One of them was written by a man called James Baldwin. The title of the book was Nobody Knows My Name. And I have also read, been inspired by Zambia Shall Be Free, written by Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. I've been inspired by writings of Kwame Nkrumah, by writings of Ahmed Ben Bella, who was the first president of Algeria. So Mwalimu Julius Nyerere's writings have also made a very, very good impact on me. So these are some of the people and some of the books that inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped reading fiction in 1969. I don't read fiction at all. I read biographies, I read about events which happened in particular years, but no fiction for me, because I don't see any value in it.
Mm-hmm. Your favorite song or artist?
My favorite song, it's called I Did It My Way.
Can you sing a line or two from there?
And now the end is near. I've said my case, for which I'm certain, my friends. So I did it my way.
Fantastic.
Regrets, I've had a few, but then again too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. So it goes on and on. Frank Sinatra's song.
Fantastic.
And that song is always sung on my birthday, and it's always dedicated to me.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. The whole essence or the objective of this show is to bring stories that are meant to inspire and leave a lasting and positive impact on people's lives. And you have just done that. You've nailed it for Ignite. And I pray that you come back. We are definitely coming back on the 25th of June. That happens to be your birthday.
My birthday, yes.
So that we can come and sing that song with you. We'll make sure that we rehearse it.
We'll rehearse it.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much to you and the members of your crew for coming to my house.
Yeah.
I fully appreciate this and wish you all the very best.
Fantastic. Usually I like to do a high five, but with COVID-19, I'm sure we're going to do a feast. Wow. Thank you so much. This has been Mwangala Chakalashi Santos. Join me for another exciting episode of Ignite with Mwangala.